My name is Richard August, and I'll be your host. Our guest is North Kingstown Finance Director James Lathrop, the Republican candidate for State General Treasurer. Welcome back to State of the State.
Well, thank you for having me back.
Director Lathrop was a guest on this program before the primary in September. We did not know which of the two Democrats vying for their party's nomination would be his opponent. During the program, Director Lathrop said he was willing to debate whichever candidate was the winner. Accordingly, we extended an invitation to the campaign of former Central Falls Mayor James Diossa to either debate or be separately interviewed by State of the State. To date, we have not received a reply. Therefore, we are providing Director Lathrop a second appearance on the program.
Oh, thank you.
You are a certified public accountant who had a practice in Connecticut before turning to the public sector. You also hold a master's degree in public administration. And you've been named as an outstanding CFO by a couple of professional organizations. What have I left out?
Also GFOA for just some of my work in financial presentation and transparency. So those are things that I'm very proud of, and it's also, I always have a great team around me.
You live in South Kingstown, right?
I live in South Kingstown. I've been there for nearly 2 decades with my wife. We love it, and my wife's been there 4 generations, so I'm never getting her out of South Kingstown.
That's probably good. Rhode Islander with deep roots.
Yes.
Now, the last time we were on, we discussed at some length the suspension of, by then General Treasurer Gina Raimondo, of COLAs for retired state and municipal employee pensions. And this is a very technical subject, so we'll try to keep it simple.
Yeah.
Now, after the September primary, after you were on this program, you issued a press release on the subject. In it, you noted that a recent audit showed that the overall pension funding stood at 71%, but that the pension that covers municipal employees, known as MERS, and the police firefighter plans are more than 90% funded. After that release, former Mayor Diossa responded that you do not understand the pension data. A spokesman for the General Treasurer's Office agreed with that assessment. How do you reply to the allegation that you don't know what you're talking about?
Well, kind of laughed at first, but the idea is about that transparency and how they present the information. People look at the pension as one pension, and it's really many pensions. And we need to have that consideration in how we treat them all. You know, I work for North Kingstown, and if the treasurer came to the town and said, you know, you're at 78% funding level, if you add just a little bit more, we can start doing COLAs to your employees. It's something that they don't want to talk about. They don't want to approach communities about. I look at how can I help people? You know, I believe in this expression is how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time. We're not going to fix all the COLAs all at once, and that seems to be their process, that no one makes any improvements until we all get there. But I think those that we can help now, we should help, and we should be making the efforts. And that was my attempt to bring, you know, Mr. Diossa has no financial experience, and it's nice that Seth Magazina reached out and helped him write that release so that he could have something that was coherent. But that's what it's about is, you know, how do we help the people? The Treasurer's Office has a very limited scope and purpose, and it's about not only investments in the money, but it's also about the people who count on us.
So it is actually the General Treasurer who makes the call as to whether or not a COLA should be allowed for a specific pension plan. It's not, the community doesn't do it, or the...
Right now they give an amount that we have to contribute to it. But if they gave an option to a community that, I said North Kingstown, we have a very healthy fund balance, we've had some surpluses, and they wanted to contribute more so that their retirees could start to receive their COLAs, it should be an option to the community. And that's what I was trying to bring out, that they kept talking about the pension fund as a single item, you know, at 70% funding. Well, it's not. It's multiple pensions. It's one investment pool.
Mm-hmm. That's the good way to look at it, as an investment pool that's managed by the General Treasurer.
Correct.
So the Treasurer spokesman said that 64 of the municipal plans paid COLAs based on last fiscal year's results, and 24 plans are below the 80% funding level and cannot issue COLAs. In addition, they said 21 municipal plans are fixed. There's no option for a COLA for those at all. Now, and you said that, told the Providence Journal that you would have to check to see if that's correct. Is it?
I don't know. They don't have that information published on their websites. And, you know, I've actually been working with the Auditor General on getting some information about OPEB and the pensions because they do some of the audits. You know, that's what government should be. It should be transparent and easy to find the information. I'm a professional, and if I can't find it, how can a normal person find it?
So there's no way to check on the statements, the statistics that they're giving us,
Oh,
the data.
I'd have to do an ARPA request to the Treasurer's office.
But it's not transparent.
Exactly.
Okay. The state has 3 retirement plans and that are managed by the General Treasurer. There's one for the state police, one for judges, and one for all the other state employees that are retired. Do you know what level taken individually each of these is funded at? Is that on the website?
It is actually on the website by grouping. I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell our audience again about the unrealized gains that are being held as a rainy day fund by the General Treasurer's Office.
Yeah.
That was really a remarkable.
So what they do is it's used a term called smoothing. So while any gains above what they predicted, they amortize those into the fund for the years when they have bad years. Like this year, it's going to be a very down year, so that they'll have some gains to be able to offset that. You know, in the last report, they had about $300 million of unrealized gains. So if you look at the report, they'll say actual assets and actuarial assets. And they use that actuarial assets of what they should have had if everything worked perfect. But they have, again, more money than they actually are using in some of the calculations. And those are things that we need to have a discussion about, is how can we either change some of the smoothing, how can we recognize it quicker? Again, people are struggling. You know, retirees are working second jobs that they never expected to have. You know, heating prices are going up. You know, you hear Social Security this year is going to get an 8% raise. Our state pensioners aren't going to get an 8% raise, especially, you know, with the teachers who aren't in the Social Security program. They are hurt the worst, and we need to address those issues.
So these unrealized gains are not just like a pool of money or a little bag of money that's sitting somewhere in a vault that they can use. Is that right?
Right. It's in their investment portfolio, but they don't recognize that money until a certain period in time.
Okay. Does that mean that part or all of the 300, you said 300 million?
That was in the 21 report, yes.
Could they add that to the 24 funds that are not 80% funded so that those funds could start doing COLAs?
Yes and no. You know, I believe in smoothing because you're never going to be perfect. However, when I think legislation needs to, or the legislators need to be informed of this type of information so that, can we bring COLAs back full time? No, we cannot right now. Could we bring back a partial COLA or a one-time stipend? Knowing that we have some certain reserves, you know, people need help today, and that's what we should be thinking about. How can we help them today to get over these hurdles that they're going to face over the next, you know, several years?
Now, the last time you said that what I call federal COVID cash, which is also known as the American Rescue Plan and the CARES Act, that those funds can be used to fund pensions. Is that
No, the ARPA funds and the COVID cannot be used to fund pensions. However, they can be used to fund OPEB. And that's the second problem that the state is having. You know, we never talk about it, but the unfunded liability for OPEB, which is the cost of retiree health care. You know, we have a substantial issue there. It's not like pensions that are in the billions, but it's still in the hundreds of millions. And, you know, we need to fix problems and address them. We don't need to be giving out, what does $250 do to help you? Well, it may help you get a little bit of oil or whatever, but if we took that money and we addressed it on these big picture items, you know, that's where it affects us. You know, I was just reading today some of the reports, and the contributions that towns and the state is making to these funds are increasing from when the time 2011 when all these things happened. So it's costing us more. We need to figure out how to drive down the cost, because then you pay it in local property taxes or income taxes. We need to prioritize what's important to the state and how can we do better on the long term, not just today.
So these other pension post-employment benefits, mostly health care, it's not pay-as-you-go basis? Is that what we're on?
That's what we're on, and they do have some funding for it, and even North Kingstown, where I work, we're on a pay-to-go, and we were, when I started, had a over $30 million unfunded liability. We're down to about 17 million right now. We're not at the point when we can start drawing on that, but we're making that progress and getting there, and that's what we need to do, because we need to think long-term and how we're going to affect taxpayers. I was talking to you earlier that my wife is 4 generations Rhode Islander, South Kingstown in particular. These people want to stay here, but at a certain point, they have to make decisions. And how many friends do you know are making decisions to move to other communities or other states, or even businesses moving to other states, because the cost of living and the cost of doing business here is so great? And short-term solutions like suspending the sales tax for 4 months, it's not going to help. We need to have long-term plans.
You had a comment the last time about allowing the general treasurer to borrow money on what I call anticipation bonds or anticipation notes. Could you explain that further for our audience?
So in 2020, the state had a cash flow issue, and it was partially due to how the federal government changed some of the due dates on tax returns. Right now, there's no mechanism in place for the treasurer to go out and borrow short-term money to fit that need. It wasn't like a situation that they were going bankrupt or had a deficit that they had to address. It was just a cash flow issue. Most towns, when they do their budgets, they actually authorize that community to borrow what they call either tax anticipation notes, so that if they have that situation, a community that, I used to work for Hopkinton, and our first month of tax collection was a little bit later, it wasn't in July, and we'd always have an issue about cash flow. So we had that safeguard. It's the treasurer's job, because it's so technical, is not about thinking about what we need to fix now. It's also to think about what problems are we going to face 6 months, a year, or 2 years from now, that how are we going to have those mechanisms so that we can address them. And that's the difference between a financial guy like me and a professional to someone who really has no financial experience, because I've gone through all these things with different communities and organizations and how you plan it. It's kind of like that home equity loan that you never want to take it, but you know that if you had something came up, that you had the ability to tap it for a short period of time and then pay it back.
So these tax anticipation notes, they're really talking about short-term borrowing, unlike what Mayor Lorza in Providence is proposing as a long-term bond issue that will take years to pay off.
Yeah, these are usually like 90 or 120-day notes. Right now the rates are very low, and traditionally they're very low. So there's not a huge cost, but again, the potential of not being able to meet your obligations in a timely manner is concerning, and this just prevents that.
Have you picked up any endorsements from various groups?
Well, actually, this week, Local 94 endorsed me. It's the largest state union, has over 10,000 members, from teachers to healthcare workers. I was very surprised. I'm the only Republican that they endorsed this year. I'm the only Republican they've endorsed since 2014, where they endorsed a person for lieutenant governor. And part of it was they understood that their members were concerned about their pensions, but they also mentioned that I spoke at the AFL-CIO annual convention. I was one of 2 Republicans that spoke.
At state convention.
At the state convention, and that I took time to address their issues. And I think that's something that my candidate didn't do. He stood up, he said thank you for the endorsement, and sat down. You know, this job requires work. And if you don't have the time or the effort to put in to write a 5-minute speech, what kind of effort are you going to make in managing their pension funds? Mm-hmm. It spoke volumes to them. And, you know, I still kept my message. You know, at the end of the day, I told them, I'm still a Republican, remember that. But I'm also a moderate Republican, and I'm really about the finances. The Treasurer's office is an elected position, but is not political. We don't have any say in legislation. We don't have any real policy-making authority. And I got to give it up to not only the members to going to the leadership and saying, you know, we really like this guy, why aren't you considering him? But also for the leadership to actually stand up and saying, we're going to endorse the best person, even though we may have repercussions that we endorsed a Republican. You know, that's true leadership, and I really want to thank them. The other one today is Judge Flanders, the former receiver of Central Falls. He officially endorsed me, and I think he's one that worked with my opponent, and you know, when he was in town and not traveling around, but he understood the value of what I bring to the table. And then I have one other that is not going to mean a lot to the community, but means a lot to me. So I believe we need to bring people up. You know, we need to introduce more young people to fill the slots when I leave, introduce them to government, financial government, or other areas. So one of my former interns, when he was a master's candidate at the University of Connecticut, worked for me. He went to work for Moody's, the rating agency, and then he worked in the budget office in Arizona for the governor, and he now is the finance director in Arizona for a very large school district, and he endorsed me. And one of the things that he said was that I allowed him the opportunity to be in situations that he really shouldn't have been about, and he never recognized the value that he received until he'd been working now for 10 years, that he had the opportunity to be in things that not only motivated him, but also gave him, you know, some ideas for the future. And that meant the world to me. So his name's Charlie Martin. I know his parents live in Westley. Yes.
That brings up an interesting point. How would you describe your management style? As if you were the general treasurer, what would be your management style?
Well, I like smart people. I like good people, and I like hardworking people. And I also don't like to micromanage. You know, I like people who think creatively. I like people who argue with me, as long as it's, you know, professional. It's not personal, and try to convince me that I'm wrong. And that's, I think, through that discourse is how you grow and you get better. And even as a Republican, you know, if I'm elected, I know I'm going to be working primarily with Democrats. And I want to be able to have that relationship where we can have discussions on how we can make the state better. That we may have some difference in our overall philosophy, but I think if we all have that same goal, and that is my style. I mean, in North Kingstown, I have a great staff. You know, the things that we've accomplished is because of them, and I recognize that.
In North Kingstown, of course, you say you work with Democrats. The town council is dominated by Democrats 3-2, yeah. And the town manager is a former Democrat Secretary of State and Democrat Mayor of North Providence, Ralph Mollis. I don't know if you can comment on this, but I heard from a fairly reliable source that Mr. Mollis has disaffiliated from the Democrat Party and become an unaffiliated voter. Is that?
I don't know. You know, me and Ralph, we have a very professional relationship. He's provided some excellent guidance to me during this campaign, and even just hiring me. We've worked well together, so I really don't know about that. We try to keep our politics out of it and just make sure that the town's running smoothly.
Well, that's important. Do you support all of the other Republican candidates for the state general office? You've got Ashley Kalis for governor, who's been on this program, Alan Gukian for lieutenant governor, who will be on this program after us. Chaz Kalenda's running for attorney general, has been on this program, and Pat Cortellessa running for secretary of state, has also been on this program. Do you support the whole ticket?
I do. You know, I have some concerns with everybody like they may have with me, but we're a team. And you know, I'm a very team-oriented person. The people that got you there, got you to the dance, are the people I want to dance with. So I do support them all. You know, I want to say personally, Alan Fung has been a huge help to me. He's always on the phone. He was the first one to call me when I got the Council 94 endorsement. Every event, he makes a point to come over and check in on me and introduce me to some of the people. So he's been great. And then all the other candidates have really been good. So I appreciate all their efforts.
This is your first run for statewide office. You did run, I think, for the town council in South Kingstown.
Yep.
What kind of reaction, are you getting publicity? Are you getting your message out to the public, do you think?
I think I am. I'm getting actually more and more Democrat and independent voters. You know, I go to Republican events, but sometimes it's like preaching to the choir. So I really have made an effort to go into some non-traditional events and just talk to people. I like smaller groups in general. This weekend I was in Woonsocket at their fall festival. I hung around the wrestling matches for quite a while. And I met a ton.
You didn't participate.
I didn't, but I did. One of the wrestlers came over and I got a nice little snapshot, and I got a call today and they said, oh, if we knew you were there, we would let you in the ring.
Okay. No thanks.
I wrestled in high school, so
okay.
Who knows?
All right, yep.
But, you know, I come from an environment of working class people. You know, my folks had a trash business. When I had my practice, I dealt basically with contractors, asphalt, gravel, builders, roofers. And those are the primary people that make Rhode Island strong. And those are the people that I care the most about. And those are the people who I want their votes. You know, sometimes they're forgotten about. And they're just assumed that, you know, you're going to vote in a certain way. I've got more support over the last 3 or 4 weeks from non-traditional Republican voters, and I'm really very appreciative of that. And it's because of being on shows like this and Channel 10 and radio. You know, I have a joke, you know, you have a can opening and I'll be there. Just invite me.
Okay. I want to veer off course a little bit. You are a Republican candidate for statewide office. The state seems to be inundated with attack ads paid for by super PACs. And for example, the Democrats seem to be hanging their hats this year on the abortion issue. One ad proclaims that if elected governor, Ashley Kalus would pass a law that would outlaw abortions. First of all, the governor doesn't pass laws. He or she signs bills into law that have been passed by the General Assembly. And secondly, on this program, Ms. Kalus said, although personally a pro-life person, abortion is the law in Rhode Island, and she would take an oath to uphold the law. And in addition, there's another attack ad against former Mayor Alan Fung. If he's elected to Congress, he will vote for a national law prohibiting abortion. Do you know of any Republican candidate in Rhode Island who's proposing a law that would eliminate or ban abortions?
Not that I know, you know, and I've kept my focus very much on the treasurer. You know, even my opponent, I've seen some of his comments about different subjects. You know, I hope he knows what the treasurer's job is. You know, that's what we need to think about, and that's where my focus is on the pensions, on cash management, and on a few of the small programs that the treasurers do. That's my focus. But
we've got about 5 minutes remaining, and I'd like you to take that time to draw a distinction between yourself and Mr. DeOsa.
Well, I don't think you can do it all in just 5 minutes, to be honest. You know, I'm definitely about 20 years older than Mr. DeOsa. I have a lot more life experience and just also financial experience. You know, he was a criminal justice major. He really doesn't have, he's spoken that he has no investments, he has no stocks and bonds. It's something that I do. It's something, I went to Bryant University. I have a undergraduate degree in accounting, as you'd mentioned, and a master's from NYU in public administration. I've been doing this very successfully for nearly 2 decades in government, and in the private side I've done it. I've also worked hard. You know, I have a second job. I'm a finance director and I do well, but I still work for some accounting firms, you know, as a second job during tax season and stuff. I know what it's like to hustle and to work and to put your kids through, you know, education. Those are character differences and technical differences. There's two parts, you know. Someone can be very good technically, but also you need good character. And I think Mr. Dioza, you've seen some of his character flaws come out from his investment in a cannabis company that, you know, he failed to disclose, and then he wasn't quite forthcoming on what his true role was. You know, he talks about coming from a drug-torn country, his parents, and yet he's investing in a drug company to sell that. I think, you know, the whole travel issue, you know, spending, while his community is going through bankruptcy, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to see the world. You know, the first time I was on the plane was when I joined the Army to go into basic training. I was 18 years old, and that was the first time I ever left New England. And, you know, that was how I saw a little bit of the world. There's a lot of differences, and he's not a bad guy, and I don't want to get into a negative thing. This just is not the job for him. He should have been looking at another position if he really wants to stay in politics. Treasurer is not a consolation prize. It should not be, you know, that resume builder. And that's why I ran. That's what it had become. And that's why we're in some of the troubles that we're in here in Rhode Island.
What I hear you saying, I think, is that you view the General Treasurer's office essentially as a nonpartisan position that is focused on the technical aspects of managing money, as opposed to being a stepping stone to higher office. Is that fair?
Exactly. You know, I've told people, if elected, this is my last job, and if not elected, I'll back to North Kingstown for a few years, and then I'm done too there. I don't have the aspirations. You know, in doing this campaigning, it's tough work for some of those other offices, and you know, the policy and the different issues. I understand what I'm good at. I think that comes with that experience. You understand what you're good at, and those are the tools that I want to use to help the state.
Well, I would like to invite James Dioza to still come on State of the State before the election, and let our audience have an opportunity to hear your views, Mr. Dioza, on the General Treasurer's responsibilities. And we want to thank all of you for watching State of the State in this political season. We would like to have had more debates, but unfortunately, some candidates have chosen not to respond to our invitation. Thank you again for coming back on.
Thank you, and I hope after the election and I win, you invite me back.
We would like to have you back. Once again, have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Join us for the next edition of State of the State.